What's up, football world? I am Bucky Brooks, and this is the Bucky Brooks Show, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. We'll talk about some of the cool things that FanDuel has going on. But today, I have to start out the podcast with all things Shedeur Sanders. And I know over the weekend, it was quite the buzz in the media sphere. Shedeur Sanders playing the final preseason game against the LA Rams. Didn't necessarily go according to script for the fifth-round pick, number 144 overall, who was embroiled in a battle, not necessarily be QB1, but potentially QB2 with Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, and Sanders vying for that position behind Joe Flacco. Dylan Gabriel gets the nod early, plays the first half. Shedeur Sanders comes in the second half, is playing with the 2s and 3s and some of the 4s, and doesn't really put on a great performance. 3 for 6, had 5 sacks that he took. Didn't necessarily look the part. And I'll be honest, all of the bad things that showed up in his college tape showed up in that performance. And that's typically what happens with young quarterbacks. You see the good in their play. You also see the bad in their play. And then somewhere in the evaluation, it kind of falls right in the middle. And for Shedeur Sanders, the performance, because he was stellar in week 1, not so good in week 3, it kind of leaves his fans and the teams wondering which one is going to show up when he has this opportunity to play. The problem that you have is you have other guys who have the ball and other guys who are vying for the spot, not only just on the roster, but for the backup quarterback spot. And Dylan Gabriel had an opportunity to play with the guys. He looked much better. He was comfortable. Ball came out. They did some quick rhythm throws to make sure that he was comfortable. And so you have this debate where Sanders was outstanding in week 1. Gabriel was so-so in week 2, better in week 3, and then Sanders wasn't great in week 3. And we're left with, what do we do with all this? Because Kenny Pickett didn't play at all. And even though he's a veteran and he hasn't taken a snap, you're trying to figure out, are they just going to hand him the number 2 job without him ever taking a snap for us to see, is he worthy of being QB2? My guess, my assumption would be, Kenny Pickett is going to be the backup quarterback when they drop the depth chart for week 1. The battle between Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders will probably come down to pecking order given the draft. So I would expect Dylan Gabriel will be listed ahead of Shedeur Sanders on the depth chart because Dylan Gabriel was the 3rd-round pick. Shedeur Sanders was the 5th-round pick. And if you're not going to upset the apple cart based on how they play, then you're just going to go according to script, and that's how it will play out. That said, there is this debate on social media whether the Cleveland Browns have sabotaged Shedeur Sanders given how they've played him. First, he gets to start against the Carolina Panthers. Didn't appear to have like significant lead-up time, but he overcame that and played well. And then in this game, he played with the backups, and 4 of his offensive linemen that he played with were cut the following day, and he didn't get an opportunity to finish the game off with a 2-minute drive because that went to Snoop Hundley, who also was cut the following day. Here's the deal, and here's what happens in front offices. Sometimes the coach in the front office will talk through different scenarios and how you want to see how guys handle certain situations. Sometimes when it comes to the quarterback, you want to evaluate what are they able to do when they have less, when they don't have the top of the line weapons, when they don't have the best offensive line. Can a player elevate those who's he's around, who's tasked with leading? How does Shedeur Sanders handle the adversity that is ultimately going to come? Because part of what you're doing when you're doing the evaluation is not grading the player's ceiling, but is understand what his floor is. And if you understand what his floor is, then if he has to play, you can build a game plan around where he's at, how you can make it where it's you mask his deficiencies, accentuate his strengths, and allow him to play winning football in a pinch if he has to step in and start. Some of this might have been Kevin Stefanski, not necessarily operating like a conspiracy theorist, but more so, hey, if Shedeur Sanders has to play, what is he like when he doesn't have everything right around him? Can he battle through the storm? Can he handle the adversity? Can we trust him to be the starting quarterback for a game, multiple games, the rest of the season? So before we jump into, Kevin Stefanski has it out for him, maybe it's part of a grander plan to see where he is right now, what he can handle right now, and if we have to play him, how will he be able to play in a pinch, meaning if something happens in the game, we got to put him in. Could he handle it as the backup quarterback? If suddenly Joe Flacco is out and we need Shedeur to play, can he handle those things? All of that is in play, which is why I wouldn't overreact to the poor performance, nor would I react to his spot on the depth chart. Since we're talking about quarterbacks, let's talk about another quarterback who is having his fair share of troubles. Anthony Richardson was told last week that he would not be the starting quarterback by the Indianapolis Colts. The QB1 for the Colts heading into the season will be Daniel Jones. And if you've monitored the Anthony Richardson situation, you certainly shouldn't be surprised that he is not the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Since being the 4th overall pick in the 2023 draft, Anthony Richardson simply has not been available, or he hasn't been good. He hasn't been good enough to be a starter for a team that is desperate to make the postseason to save the job of the head coach and the general manager. Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard have a lot riding on this season. And in these moments, you have to go with the guys that you trust. It is hard to trust Anthony Richardson right now because, look, he hasn't played in 17 of the possible 34 games that he could have started in. He has been beset by numerous injuries that have kept him from even developing to the point where you feel good about him. And his lack of availability has stunted his growth and his development. And then when he's been on the field, let's be honest, it hasn't been great. Completion percentage over 2 years at 50.6%, 11 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, passer rating at 67.8. I don't care what level you're at, high school, college, pros, it's hard to hand the ball to someone with that kind of production. And I know when he entered the league, he's one of the freakazoid athletes that we've seen. At the combine, he dazzled. He amazed 6'4", 244, 4'4", 340, 40.5-inch vertical, 10.9 broad jump, all of those things. He threw the ball darn near out the stadium in Lucas Oil Field when he had an opportunity to throw the deep ball. All that stuff made him the wow player of the combine. But none of those things matter when it comes to football. If you go back and study how Anthony Richardson has played, not only in college, but even going back to high school, he's never been a dominant player. He's always had injuries and those things that have prevented him from being a guy that can realize the immense talent and potential that he's displayed. But at some point, you have to play. And he has not played enough, and he hasn't played well when he has been in those brief moments as the starting quarterback. So if you're the Colts and you're sitting here and you're looking at the team and you're looking at a roster that certainly is good enough to be a playoff team, you have to figure out what is the best option. Last year, the Colts tried to do it. They handed the ball to Joe Flacco and said, Joe, save us. He couldn't get it done. This year, the situation has been where you're looking at Daniel Jones. You bring him over. He was a former top 10 pick. He led the Giants to the postseason. He may not be the best player, but he's been a guy who has played winning football at times. And in fact, his ability to play winning football is one of the reasons why Shane Steichen talked about him being the starting quarterback. Management, understanding the operation at the line of scrimmage, in and out the huddle, just the whole overall process of managing the team. Daniel Jones right now is a superior player. Doesn't mean that Anthony Richardson can't get to the point where he's a viable starter, but it does mean right now, Daniel Jones gives them the best chance to win. Now, I'm not blown away by Daniel Jones. I'm not going to sit here and say that he is a all-pro, Pro Bowl caliber player. But what he is a more consistent player at the position, which is what the Indianapolis Colts desperately need right now. They want consistency. They want stability. They want to know down in, down out what they're getting from the position. And even though Anthony Richardson probably has a higher ceiling, Danny Dimes' floor is higher. And safety, security in these moments are what the Colts are looking for. Now, Anthony Richardson obviously was upset. His agent's been upset. There's been conversation about the trade market and what would happen for Anthony Richardson if he was traded. I liken this situation to what San Francisco dealt with a few years ago with Trey Lance. Trey Lance was top 5 pick. Trey Lance didn't play well. Trey Lance was also hurt, and he didn't necessarily feel like a great fit for what Kyle Shanahan wanted to do. And so they moved him to the Dallas Cowboys. At that time, they moved him for a 4th-round pick. He served as Dak Prescott's backup quarterback, and now he is with the LA Chargers, and he looks like he might be on the come up because Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman have an offense and a way of rebuilding athletic quarterbacks where it gives them a chance. Much like Trey Lance, Anthony Richardson was a very young player entering the league, 21 years of age. Immaturity was a part. If you ask people behind the scenes, there were some things that went on that made you question maybe his maturity, but also his professionalism when it came to the role and the responsibilities that a franchise quarterback has and must undertake. He has gotten better by all accounts, but it's one of those things that you question. So when I look at the trade market, I'm thinking it's going to be a day 3 pick if the Colts elect to move him. There are people that will be intrigued and enticed by the talent. There are coaches who will want to take on that talent and see if they can develop him as a quarterback project. The talent, the tools, those things stand out. However, getting him to take those things and build a set of skills that allows him to play well, that is the challenge for anyone who takes him on. Because of that, and because of the rookie contract where the money he's still owed, it has to be a situation where he is not viewed as a savior or someone that is going to come and play this year or even next year. It's someone that has a quarterback in place, but wants to kind of see if they can tinker. Think about this as your dad or your granddad trying to restore a car. Can they get up on the hood? Can they fix it? Can they make it work? Can they find a way to jumpstart the battery and get it going? For Anthony Richardson, that's exactly what he needs. For all the wonderful talent that he has, the technique has been shoddy, and he just needs to learn how to play the position. You're hoping that he can find a spot, because I don't believe it's going to be Indianapolis, a spot in a coach that has the ability to patiently develop him. They can whisper the sweet nothings in his ear to help him build his confidence. And ultimately, a more confident player, a more refined player will lead to a better player the next time that he gets his chance to play in the National Football League. Might be in Indy, but more than likely, it needs to be somewhere else. And speaking of being somewhere else, Micah Parsons wanted to be anywhere else than at that game the other night when the Dallas Cowboys were taking on the Atlanta Falcons. The all-pro defender decided in the middle of the game, hey, I'm going to take a little lay down. I'm going to lie down in the medical tent and just chill out while my teammates are playing. Not only am I lie down on the table, I am also going to show my lack of support for my team by not wearing my jersey, not fully buying in or participating in the spirit of the team. Now, I'm going to say this. I'm disappointed in Micah Parsons simply for the fact of, regardless of what the contract situation is, when you show up, your boys are your boys. And so you should still feel good about the dudes that are playing on the team. And some of these young guys that you've been working with since February, March, April, you want to root them on and make sure that they have an opportunity to fully be the best versions of themselves in what is a make or break game for so many of the guys on the roster. From a leadership standpoint, you expect more from Micah because that's what leaders do. Leaders lead their team amid chaos. And in a chaotic situation that he is dealing with, if he could display the kind of leadership that you expect of a guy who's going to wear the C on the chest, then you feel better about him. Not saying that he's wrong for feeling the way that he feels. I'll say this. Jerry Jones has botched this situation from the jump. Micah Parsons should have got his money a year ago. He should have got his money in the offseason at the latest. They should have had this deal done. So Micah Parsons shows up to camp and he is able to focus on what everyone around the Cowboys wants to focus on, getting this team to be a playoff contender and a title contender this season with Dak Prescott entering the last year of a deal. When I think about Micah Parsons, there's no doubt in my mind that he deserves to be paid where the market value would say is anywhere between $35 and $40 million. If you think about what he is on the high end, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, they're at over $40 million. If you think about Max Crosby signing his deal, that puts him at $35 million. Somewhere in there is the sweet spot. And if I am arguing on his behalf, I'm saying he's in that $40 million range, given 52.5 sacks, 9 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, and 63 tackles for loss. He deserves to get paid. He deserves to break the bank. The problem that you have is Jerry Jones loves these contentious negotiations. It's the businessman in him that loves to feel like he is squeezed every dollar out of the negotiation that he can, and he walks away a winner in the deal. I'm gonna say that it's the stupidest thing that I've ever seen when it comes to the Cowboys doing these deals. Why they drag their star players over the coals, I will never understand it. When in a relationship business, you want your best players to feel great about where they work, what they're doing, and who they're doing it for. So Jerry Jones may win the battle, but he's going to lose the war because Michael Parsons isn't going to feel great about being a Cowboy. No matter how much they pay him, he's not going to feel good about this process. Now, if you're Michael Parsons, I understand what you're doing with the hold in. You are trying to put Jerry Jones's feet to the flame, and you're trying to get him to do the deal. Jerry Jones did some reportedly underhanded stuff by trying to deal directly with Michael Parsons instead of going through the agent, David Mulgeta, who is one of the best negotiators in the league. And I understand why Jerry Jones would want to do that, because Mulgeta is a monster when it comes to putting owners in bad situations where they have to give up the bag so that players can stay and be paid like star players. Michael Parsons is a star, and Jerry Jones acknowledges that. Everyone in the building knows that he's a star. They just need to pay him. But trying to run the end run around David Mulgeta to go directly to Parsons and to kind of create a divide between the agent, the player, and ownership is not cool. And it put Micah in a bad spot because he certainly wants to play because he's been there. He certainly wants to get paid because he deserves it. But now he's in this spot where he doesn't know how to go, and he's in his feelings because we're a few weeks away from the regular season starting, and this deal has not been done, nor has it been a good faith negotiation where you're really trying to get the best for both sides. So I'll take Micah Parsons to task because you can't lay down on the table. You can't sit there and pout and not support your teammates. But I understand why you're feeling that way. Hopefully over the next week, we finally hear about a deal done between the Cowboys and their all-pro linebacker that allows him to get paid the money that he's worth and allows the Cowboys and Brian Schottenheimer to bring back one of the best players that they have on the roster and a defender that they need to play at a high level for this team to realize any of their dreams. Speaking of dreams, I know you guys dream of the Cowboys going to the Super Bowl, but what I found interesting on FanDuel Sportsbook, the line over under on 5.5 wins for the Cowboys was sitting there at -370. That is crazy to me. I think we can chalk up at least 6 wins for the Cowboys, no matter how bad they are. If it's me, I'm going to go to FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm going to take that. I'm going to put a little wager on the over because I think the Cowboys are going to get that, regardless of whether Michael Parsons likes the deal that he eventually agrees to. You got to take the Cowboys in that situation. Now, finally, another hold-in/holdout situation. Terry McLaurin, Pro Bowl wide receiver, signs with the Washington Commanders a new 3-year, $96 million deal, $30 million bonus. He finally got paid, and he should have been paid. It took them a while to get to this point where they're paying their top receiver $32 million annually, but it was well worth it. Not only has Terry McLaurin had 5 straight seasons with over 1,000 yards, he's not only a 2-time Pro Bowler, but last year, Jaden Daniels' debut season, Terry McLaurin had one of the best seasons of his career, arguably the best. He had 82 catches, almost 1,100 yards, 13 touchdowns with Jaden Daniels as the trigger man. And when you watch this team play, there's no doubt he's the number one option in the passing game. And when you think about what this team needs to be going forward to compete and contend with the Philadelphia Eagles, they need Terry McLaurin to be special. And the only way to get him there is to get him paid, to have him start to work with Jaden Daniels and Deebo Samuels and some of the other veterans that are in the building to help this Commanders team go to the next level. And when I think about what this could mean, I just think about the yin and the yang of the 2 wide receivers on the perimeter. Terry McLaurin is a vertical specialist. Terry McLaurin is an explosive playmaker. Terry McLaurin has all the goods to be the number one. Deebo Samuel on the other side is more of a catch and run playmaker, a hybrid offensive weapon that can do it in the backfield. He can do it in the perimeter. But either way, when the ball is in his hands, he can do it. Now the Commanders with Zach Ertz, they have a very dangerous receiver core because they can beat you in a few different ways. And as this team is continuing to grow under Jaden Daniels, it is important that they have multiple playmakers in place to add an explosive element to the offense. Well, now that you decided to pay Terry McLaurin to give him the kind of money that he was looking for, because he was using DK Metcalf as a barometer. DK Metcalf, remember, had signed a deal that put him at $33 million annually, and Terry McLaurin is right behind there. The issue that you had was DK Metcalf was 28 at the time that he signed the deal. Terry McLaurin is 31. Terry McLaurin joins Tyreek Hill as one of the only guys, like as the only two guys over 30 years old amongst top 24 in guaranteed money in the National Football League at the wide receiver position. You just don't pay older guys that much, but for Terry McLaurin, his value made it where the Commanders needed to do that. Now that the deal is done, where do the Commanders go from here? I think a big part of the success of the Commanders hinges on their ability to counter what defenses are going to do to slow down Jaden Daniels. Some of the things that worked last year for the team, they're going to take away because they spent the entire offseason studying how the Commanders went about their business, their pet routes, their favorite things. Some of the tactics that they used last year, they're going to be null and void, dead on arrival, given the amount of time and attention that they are putting on the young quarterback. To me, this is a great chance for Terry McLaurin to continue to evolve his game, to continue to show people that he has more tools in the toolbox when it comes to being a playmaker. It also gives him a chance to complement what Deebo Samuel is going to do on the other side. We've seen Deebo Samuel dominate the game at times as a guy that can make plays on catch and run concepts. Shallow crosses, bubble screens, fly sweeps, whatever it is, you give it to Deebo Samuel on the move. He's a special playmaker. Well, now with Terry McLaurin in the fold for the long term, Deebo Samuel's vying for a contract in the short term, two highly motivated guys around a quarterback that is one of the best in the business. To me, everything is out there for the Commanders. This is a team that has legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. They're good enough to be a Super Bowl contender. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Commanders overtake the Eagles as the team to beat in the NFC. With Terry McLaurin in the fold, happy, healthy, and paid, the Washington Commanders got one step closer to knocking off the Birds at the top of the NFC East. Now, I want to put a little wager. If you're going to go back to FanDuel and think about a wager, we talk about best quarterbacks in the division. Some will say Jaden Daniels, others will say Jalen Hurts. And then some of the Cowboys fans will talk about Dak Prescott. Well, I happen to go through the sports book, and I'm looking at Dak Prescott, and I feel like Dak Prescott is undervalued when it comes to the odds on FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, you can get odds on Dak Prescott surpassing 3,800 yards. The odds are plus 114. That is a deal for me. This dude is going to throw for 4,500 yards because they're going to air it out. They don't have a running back. They got two big-time wide receivers in George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson. They got to throw it because the only way the Cowboys can keep up with the Commanders and the Eagles is to throw it. I can talk about the best quarterbacks in the division, but the most productive quarterback is probably going to be Dak Prescott, given the odds, the numbers, and what he will need to do to get this team on top. So there you have it, the Bucky Brooks Show. We talked about a few different things. Shedeur Sanders, what it means in Cleveland. Anthony Richardson, what the trade market is available for, what's out there for him if he is traded. Micah Parsons, needing to be a better teammate, can't lie down on the job. And then finally, we're talking about Terry McLaurin getting his dollars. If it ain't making dollars, it ain't making sense. It makes a lot of sense for the Commanders to pay him. Next time on the Bucky Brooks Show, we're going to talk about some of these college games coming up, some of the things that you got to get ready for if you are a team preparing for the regular season. Now that the cuts are almost behind us, we can start casting our eye to what is going to be a great regular season. But until next time, make sure you rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you drop a comment to let me know how I can serve you better when it comes to talking about football and all things that are happening in the National Football League. Until next time, I'm Bucky Brooks, and I'll talk to you soon.